Limbo Lodge by Joan Aiken, Chapter 5 continues. Something did, though, later in the night. Dido had fallen asleep as soon as she lay down. The unaccustomed luxury of a real bed, even a hard, narrow cot and scanty cover, flung her into slumber at once. But after a couple of hours she suddenly woke, aware that some sound had roused her. She looked up at the window nearest her bed. The storm had blown itself out. A bright moon shone. The window was clearly outlined. In brilliant white moonshine, Dido saw a hand slip over the sill. Then another hand. Then a head and shoulders rose up, outlined against the pearly night sky. Yorka was instantly awake, too. "Who that climb in?" she whispered. Dido's voice answered. Talisman's voice answered. "Don't be afraid, Dido. Are you there? I've come to share your sleeping quarters." "Doc Tally, saints save us, am I glad to see you again." The doctor swung her feet neatly over the sill and settled cross-legged on the floor. A sweet, powerful scent, something like that of cloves, coming from her immediately filled the room. Yorka said at once, "You been with Auntie Tala'a, you shocky doctor. You got sticky sting men glasses." "Whose glasses?" "These here, my Lord Orklosh." Moving to the patch of moonlight where the doctor sat, Yorka produced the broken spectacles from her little pouch and displayed them. "Oh, yes, I can easily mend these with a bit of sticking plaster," Talisman said. She had brought her bag of medical equipment slung on her back. She delved into it and found the plaster. "You're Yorka, are you not? I met your aunt last night." "Doc Tally," said Dido as the repair was being swiftly and neatly executed, "how in the name of wonder did you climb up through that window?" Talisman chuckled quietly. Well, you see, while I was doing my medical training, I spent a couple of months in the mountains of Transylvania with a kind of senior lady magician." "A witch?" suggested Dido. "I suppose you might call her that. Certainly she was a healer and a seer, and she taught me various ways of getting into houses where there is a sick person. Sometimes, there may be nobody around to let in the doctor, or they may not want the doctor to get in. In this house, I think there is somebody who is in a bad pain. Isn't that so?" "On the knob, Doc," said Dido. "There's a poor gal somewhere downstairs having a baby. Leastways, she may have had it by now." "No, she is not," said the doctor. "I would know that. I had better go down directly and see to her." "You may have a mite trouble getting to her," Dido warned. "There's some fierce old hags in this house." "I dare say they will be glad enough to let me by," said Talisman dryly. She picked up her bag. Out of it rolled something hard and round. Yorka let out a squeak of astonishment. "One head bone! From Kulara, the place of stones!" She picked up the object and held it in the moonlight. It was a human skull, dark in color and plainly very old indeed. "Where did you get?" she demanded. No, my love, No, my love, I know what you think, but indeed I didn't steal it from the place of stones," Talisman said soothingly. "I plan to take it back there, later. I will tell you. Now, I must go and look after that poor girl." "Can we help, Doc?" said Dido. "If I need you, I will call. There's probably a whole troop of people in there already. Yorka will hear if I call, won't you, Yorka?" "I hear," said Yorka. "Well, I'm down there. You think helpful thoughts." After Talisman's light step had died away down the stair, Dido said, "How did she know your name was Yorka? I never told her that." "She'd just been with my mother's sister, Tala'a," said Yorka. "Last night, Aunt Tala'a probably helped her out of jail." "How do you know that?" "Sent Aunt Tala'a, she every day. Pick melanthus curd. Make ointment. No one else do like that." "I see. I wonder how Talisman got in touch with your aunt." "Aunt Tala'a know many a thing. Sisingana know she helped doctor from the drums." "Can you hear the drums, Yorka? Do you know what they say?" "No," said Yorka sadly. "Hear, yes, but not know what they say. No Tylo can. We learn speak other tongues, so drum noise slip away from ear." "You mean, because you can speak to me in Shaki language, you can't understand drum language?" What a blame shame, said Dido. I bet you'd rather know what the drums are saying. Too late, said Yorka. Too late now. Maybe if never we come, hear drum again. Never weak, Dido had learned from Tylo, was a time when everything that had gone wrong would be put right, or the other way round. Both girls felt too wide awake now to sleep again. Instead, they told each other stories. Meanwhile, Dido tried to think helpful thoughts. Perhaps they did help. Yorka said, That girl down there, now better, girl baby has come. Oh, I'm glad, said Dido. The family won't be, though, will they? Angrians don't like girl babies. No, can't inherit house, can't fight in battle. Girl baby often put in forest for wild pig to eat. No, said Dido, horrified. They don't really do that, do they? Those Angrians? Golly, often. But not this girl, maybe. Listen. The two girls crouched in silence, listening. Then Yorka said, Baby fine voice. Tell ghosts go back where they came from. Where is that? Where do they come from? Back to frontland, underground, under forest, where sun rise in west, shadow go frontwards. Shadowland, ghost people come from there. The cry of a newborn, unnamed child, Yorka told Dido, contains terrific ghostly power. Giving a child a name, like putting a ring on its finger, ties down the spirit, reduces its force, but makes it safer, too, from the hungry spirits that cluster in search of prey whenever a baby is about to be born. Like tree snake, waiting for plum bird chicks to hatch, Yorka said. Ah, now listen, doctor calling us. Dido could hear no call, but followed Yorka without hesitation. They ran down the winding stair and along another narrow, damp passage to a kind of lobby where several maids were gathered outside a door. Isabel, the housekeeper, was there and sternly waved them back. Bad girls! How did you get out? Go away! Go to your room. This is no place for you. But the door opened and Talisman's voice called from inside. No, let them come in. They are wanted. I need them here as witnesses. Passing the group of servants, who unwillingly stood back to let them through, the girls went into a large, untidy room, dimly lit by a dozen candles. 3 or 4 maidservants were running about with jugs and cloths and towels. The Senora Esperanza Aria stood, grim as a post, on the far side of the bed, which was the untidiest feature of the room, rumpled and crumpled, tangled with damp sheets and piled high at both ends with pillows. Curled limply against the pillows and draped with a silk shawl was a skinny girl, utterly submerged in sleep. And in a basket beside her on the bed, not sleeping at all but looking alertly about, lay a tiny baby, wrapped in a shawl of degila flowers. Dr. Talisman, standing by the bed, said, Good. I need you two to witness the christening. This is not right. None of this is right, said the Senora Esperanza sternly. A christening should not be performed by a woman, even if she is trained as a doctor. She swept Talisman with a disapproving glare. Is it because she's a doctor, wondered Dido, or because she's wearing men's clothes? It was plain that the Senora had not a single moment been deceived by the men's clothes. Very well, Senora, said Talisman calmly. Then let your husband, the Senor Don Enrique Areta, perform the ceremony. He will not. I mean, said the Senora, correcting herself, he cannot. The Senor is indisposed. He is unwell. In that case, suggested Dido, how about Lord Harrodsfoot? He's a college learned fellow. He'd oblige. I bet he'd do it for you, all hunky-dory. Despite the Senora's look of even greater disapproval, Talisman said, Is Lord Harrodsfoot in the house? Yes, from all I hear of him, he would be an excellent choice. Let him be sent for. And, putting her head out the door, she ordered, Let the English, my lord, be wakened and brought here directly. Senora Medica, said Dona Esperanza crossly, we must of course oblige you for saving my daughter's life and the child. She don't sound a mite thankful, Dido thought. But now you go beyond what is needed or seemly. Oh, I don't think so, said Dr. Talisman cheerfully. Not at all. You come here a stranger to us, an outsider. Not entirely, ma'am. I was born on this island 25 years ago. Indeed, this news seemed very unpleasing to the Signora. And furthermore, Talisman went on, I have, from one of my parents, the gift of knowing in advance, a very little, what fortune keeps in store for some of my patients. For instance, she leaned down and touched one of the baby's fists with her finger. Instantly, the tiny hand grasped the finger and held it. Dr. Talisman looked up, smiling at the angry grandmother. For instance, ma'am, just by this contact with your granddaughter's hand, I can tell you two things. One is that in the circle of people closely connected with her at this moment, there is one who wishes her great harm. Safely christened, she will be in less danger from that. And secondly, your granddaughter has an unusual future ahead of her if, and only if, mark you, she reaches the age of an adult. She may well become the ruler of this island. Of course, that is only one chance among many. At every moment of our lives, so many different choices face us. Do they not? The Signora did not seem particularly enchanted at the suggestion that her granddaughter might one day become queen of Aratu. She began, I do not at all understand, in an angry voice. But at this moment, Lord Herodsfoot entered the room, tying his cravat with a hasty, negligent hand, wearing the slightly blind, bemused, helpless look of a person who ordinarily wears glasses but has mislaid them. He was followed by Tylo, plainly anxious not to miss anything interesting that might be going on. You sent for me, ma'am. Goodness gracious me, he added, peering about him at the disorderly candlelit room. Have I come to the right place? Milord Ocloche! Cried Yorka joyfully. See! Shocky Talisman, fix your glasses very best. And she ran forward, pulled Herodsfoot's hand so as to bring his head down to her level, and carefully, tenderly fitted the glasses on his nose. My word! That is an improvement, ejaculated Lord Herodsfoot, adjusting the spectacles with the palms of both hands. Then he looked straight ahead, and the first thing he saw was the face of Dr. Talisman studying him across the tumbled bed, wearing her usual expression of keen, alert attention. Dr. Talisman, I believe? He gave her his wide, friendly smile. I cannot tell you, ma'am, how exceedingly happy I am to meet you, and how grateful I am for this work of rescue. He touched the mended glasses. I've been hearing so much about you, both from Miss Twite and from the boy Tylo here. But now, how can I be of use? For I feel this is not a room where male guests are welcome for longer than is strictly needful. Now catching sight of the Signora, grim and silent in the shadows, he made her a low bow and said, Ma'am, your most obedient servant. She silently inclined her head, but made no reply. We need this child christened, Talisman said briefly. After the Signora here is of the opinion that the ceremony is to be performed by a man. Sir, will you be so good? It was plain that during Lord Herodsfoot's extensive travels round the world, he had at various times been faced with unusual circumstances equal to these. He said, Certainly, if you wish it, ma'am, glancing from Talisman to the Signora, who again very slightly inclined her veiled head. Would you have such a thing as a drop of holy water, or a thimbleful of the Gila nut oil? Certainly not, snapped the Signora. Well, it is no matter. I have a thimbleful myself, which this boy's great-grandfather was so kind as to give me in return for my reciting Shakespeare sonnets to him. And he pulled a beautiful little spiral shell from his pocket. Do you have a pin, my dear doctor? Talisman produced a pin from her neckcloth, and Herodsfoot, with extreme care, removed a tiny plug of clay from the opening of the shell, and tipped a minute drop of the oil on his finger. Very quickly he replugged the shell with the speck of clay and returned it to his pocket. Meanwhile, while the overwhelming aromatic scent of concentrated Gila juice filled the air of the whole chamber. Now, said Herodsfoot briskly, where is the baby? Ah, there you are, my dear. And he scooped the baby from its basket. She stared at him peacefully, but made no sound. What name is she to be given, Signora? Grimly the Signora shook her head. Her name is no affair of mine. Dr. Talisman, do you know? No, sir. I entered this house only in time to help with the confinement. Dear me. Shall we have to wake the mother? I would be most reluctant to do so. You would not be able to, said Talisman. I gave her a draught which will keep her asleep till morning. Then we shall have to choose a name, said Herodsfoot, undaunted. Signora, what would you say to the name Vittorina? But as she was beginning a distasteful motion of her head, Yorka spoke up. Baby's name be Miria. How do you know that? Inquired Talisman. My mother's sister, Tala'a, tell me so. Good. Maria it shall be, Lord Herodsfoot. He nodded, touched the baby's forehead with the finger anointed in jejula nut oil, and said rapidly, In the name of this island and its ancestral powers, I pronounce this child's name to be Maria Francisca Aria. Then he popped her back into the basket, adding apologetically, I always think it is best for a child to have two names, in case it doesn't fancy the first one, so I gave her one of mine. I hope you don't think it a liberty, and that she will not object. Thank you, sir, said the signora dourly. At least Francisca is a more godly name than Miria. She should properly have been given her father's name also. Oh, I do beg your pardon, ma'am. I had understood that in this land a child carries its mother's name. That is so, the signora answered grimly. But the father's name is customarily added as well. In that case, let us add it by all means. Most unfortunately, said the signora, as the words were being pulled out of her, as if the words were being pulled out of her by pincers. Most unfortunately, we do not know the father's name. Dido noticed Dr. Talisman give a compassionate glance at the sleeping girl on the bed. Then, said Lord Herodsfoot, I will write it down as I spoke it. Pulling a notebook from his pocket, he rapidly scribbled a couple of lines, remarking, Doctor in attendance. Shall I put Dr. Talisman Van Lind? She nodded. And witnesses, Dido Twite and Yorka. Can you sign them, my dears? Yorka could not write, but made her mark a little flower drawing. Dido wrote, Dido. Then Herodsfoot dipped a bit of wax on the paper from a candle and pressed it with his seal ring. There you are, ma'am, signed, sealed, and in order. From this moment, little miss is safe from all ghostly enemies. He handed the paper to the signora, who looked far from pleased, but received it with civility. Now we should all return to our chambers, she announced. Dr. Talisman, I do not know which of my servants admitted you to my house. Dido wondered very much what explanation Dr. Talisman would give for her presence in the mansion. But at this moment, they were all startled by a clamor of shouts in another part of the building and a thunderous banging on some distant door. Oh, heavens above, what now? Ejaculated the signora. The footman came running in to announce, Signora, it is the very honorable Gerente Manuel with a troop of civil guards. He asks admission. Donna Esperanza hurried away. And that is the end of chapter 5.